What is up, Kenn Folks? How y'all doing today? Man, Jubilee is the gift that just keeps on giving. I mean, shoot. I feel like it's Christmas time. I'm not even going to hold you. Should schools teach certain things to kids, man? I'm all for this one, man. I'm excited. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yo, let's get into it. So, without further ado, let's get into this.
Teachers have their own political agendas.
I'm gonna be honest, as a teacher, especially after COVID and all of that, I don't have time for a political agenda. I'm here trying to catch up with curriculum, pick up my readers that are, 2-3 grade levels behind. I do not have time for that. If you're a good person, we're good. We're gravy. All good. You know what I mean?
But your definition, and sometimes this can happen and it becomes political, is what is your definition of a good person? Would you think that I'm a good person because I'm raising my kids to be with Judeo-Christian values and they live in a heteronormative home where we talk about how divorce is wrong, cheating is wrong. We have friends of the LGBT community, but we teach our children that from a biblical perspective, that's not okay. Your definition of whether or not they are good could be very different than my definition of whether or not they are good.
To kind of clarify, in my classroom, if they're kind and they're not bashing anybody, judging anybody, kind of throwing out names, anything like that, they're good. It's not to say that topics like that don't come up in class. And I do open it up to discussion. I just keep it clear that this is a safe space. We don't judge each other. We're not going to bash each other. I understand you have your own experiences, but we're not going to come in with an agenda, you can say.
This is where I have to push back. I'm not in school. My brothers and my sisters are. And from what I understand is the LGBTQ or trans person, they're a very protected class in the classroom. You can't have conversations or ask them questions about who they are, what they are, because it could be problematic. I kid you not. In my brother's high school, there is a kid who has a collar, walks on all fours, and barks like a dog. It's like you could say there's no political agenda, but as a teacher, you understand you can't be outspoken and talk about certain things like this, because if you were to say, hey, sit up in your chair, we don't do this in the classroom, like we're here to learn, this is a distraction, stop barking, to say anything would be a lawsuit. So most teachers aren't going to step up. So I don't think it's a political agenda per se. I think a lot of teachers are scared because their job is in jeopardy. I think there's a lot of things that go into it.
And I feel like this idea of parents and their teachers of their political biases and all of this is just all of this fear that is clouding their judgment,
Except we have numerous, not just...
We have experiences.
My own child, first week of school, what pronouns you wanted to go by. I mean, not what's your favorite subject, how can I help you succeed academically?
Who's to say that wasn't a part of the questions too, And I understand that question could stand out.
So maybe you don't understand that you're teaching politics.
But that's not politics, that's just like basic respect.
Basic respect. Oh, God. Okay. I graduated in 2011. So that wasn't a question. Basic respect was like, hey, come into the classroom, sit down, shut up. That's basic respect. Like, asking a pronoun is, maybe it's just me. I don't see it as a respect thing. Maybe I'm a dinosaur. I'm a freaking dinosaur. You're trying to push a certain ideology. I don't feel like it's political, but I think you're definitely pushing a social thing onto kids, right? Because then when you have somebody who says my pronouns are he, him, but she clearly looks like a girl, right? And if the students don't call her that, who's going to be the one who's being reprimanded? It's going to be the other kid. Everything is changing. Everything is evolving. But that doesn't mean that we're going in the right direction. And my question too is, what happened with the disconnect? Because granted, I'm pretty sure there were problems with teachers and parents back in the day. Like, if we're talking about how many apples fell off an apple cart and there's no miscommunication and there's no issue with anything other than the fact that I gave your student a problem and your student was unable to solve it for whatever reason. We're having a conversation based on the subject matter so that my child could be able to move on to the next level. What does knowing your pronouns and all this stuff have to do with anything. Make sure my kid knows how to read and write.
Discussion about sexuality doesn't belong in schools.
I had a sex ed class when I was in 3rd grade, and it was quite simple. Boys go in this room, girls go in this room, they play a little video on a black and white TV. You know, you see the genitalia, and you're like, oh God, I got one of those, cool, now we're figuring out what I am. The fear is these schools have no boundaries. Like, if they do the classroom thing where they want to split kids up, how many genders are we gonna do this?
People think that this is just kind of happening, it's a one-off. It is in so many schools. Where I live in Florida, there was a poster going around where kids could text anonymous strangers to get information about sex. And on this poster in school, want to get laid?
Wow.
I mean, it's beyond, and there is a push for pleasure-based sex. Pleasure for who?
I think to his point is now it's getting overly complicated. There are certain sexualities that I don't want my kids to be privy to, but might be taught. The aspect of sexual education, I feel like the way that it's taught as well, which I have a problem with, is that you assume that all students, which also by the data, so it's not like it's completely left field, but the assumption is that the majority of y'all are going to have sex at this stage in the game, if you guys haven't had it already. There isn't really a talk of abstinence as a way of doing it, and even when you bring up abstinence, people are like, yeah, like, nigga, you're gonna be sleeping around. There is no talk about having self-restraint, and I'm not just saying just be abstinent, but I feel like a lot of people these days are really bitter, women and men, when giving their heart to somebody who they truly trust and then having them misuse that trust. And now you're with another person, and now you're just having all these connections with all these people and constantly being misused. That's going to play on you. It causes problems.
We're moving into a conversation about comprehensive sex ed. What I am talking about is when I go into this classroom and I'm teaching kids, I'm not going to just teach kids material that is heteronormative.
Out of curiosity, it sounds like what you're saying is you want to be able to introduce all ways of life. Like these are the people that you will encounter with throughout life.
That is what I'm arguing, yes.
So would it be okay to include a book with a man having a relationship with a 12-year-old in that book? I know it's extreme.
No.
Hold on, but just hear me out.
Because now you're equivocating gay people to pedophiles.
No, I'm not.
And no, that's not okay.
That is not.
No. You're drawing a line that I'm not drawing. And
you're definitely crossing a line.
I agree. I agree. And this is why I'm bringing it up, is who establishes the boundary.
Woo! He said it. Dude, because here's the thing. Why are we talking about minor attractive persons in school? That is a conversation being had. We're changing the term pedophile now to minor attractive persons. We're telling teachers about what it is to be a minor attractive person, and you are having to relay this information to students. You're just doing your job. You know how many people are just doing their job and just doing absolutely crappy things? This is a prime example of it, because that is technically a sexuality. Granted, it's against the law, but that is technically a sexuality. There is a pedophile, minor attractive person's flag. Like, there's all this stuff. So if someone wants to have the conversation, be like, yeah, well, you know, like, I mean, he said it. Let's go. We have to have, if we're talking about everything, we got to talk about everything. You have to be very, very careful, because kids are stupid. They are stupid. I watch kids eat sand. Like, they are stupid. And to expect them to be able to comprehend something as complex as sexuality and to understand exactly what that means, you can't. Maybe you assume you can, but I'm going to just be honest. I don't think you can.
Establishes the boundary.
The law.
But what
Period.
law? The law is
But the law that's been signed in is some few
No, I'm
states.
sorry. No, there's laws against between adults having sex with children.
There's also laws still in the book saying that you cannot be a white man or a white woman dating a black man or marrying a black man or marrying a black woman. That's still on the law book. So I'm sorry, miss me at the law talk. Just because it's legal or illegal doesn't mean that it's necessarily right. So like I said, some states, that's still in the books. They might not necessarily actually like arrest you and hold you captive, but that is still on the law books.
We have a belief system at home, and the children want to break the boundaries of that belief system naturally because we're human beings. That's just what we do. And we're trying to confine them to a set of beliefs to say, this is what is right in our home. And we're seeing the schools get funding from Planned Parenthood. They tried to pass a bill to put medical facilities to offer abortions in high schools here in California. And it's gradual, right? It starts with, this is a book that has 2 dads. This is a book with 2 moms. And it's just a gradual curiosity that could leverage and break away that child from the root in the home.
Here's the thing too, and this is where it kind of gets 1984-ish, is if you are a student who feels a certain way or starts learning about certain things, like you said, you're going to be curious. I'll use the example of a transgendered student. If they feel like they are transgender, the teacher can withhold that information from the parents, and some places are even saying that social workers can be involved if a child comes out and their parent goes against them, that the state can be involved and take that child away from the parent. So when it comes to that, once again, I understand these teachers are doing their jobs, but there are plenty of people who are doing their jobs and for the sake of being good people that we look back now in history and we're just like, yo, y'all were just following rules, but you guys weren't asking questions, right? And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is also one of the reasons why I told my boyfriend, when we get married, I'm homeschooling, because there's so much stuff going around that I don't want my kids to be exposed to, and I want them to actually have an education. I want them to actually have an ability to become successful, and I don't feel like they're gonna be as successful if the teacher's more concerned about the fact that they use the pronouns incorrectly as opposed to the fact that they failed a test. You know what I mean? That they need to be sent to the principal's office because they said someone or called someone the wrong name. But at the same exact time, if my kid is having problems or issues with their math and science, that's not as important. I can't, in good faith, put my trust in the educational system, especially because I do live in California. I know other places might be different, but California, we're really progressive and progressive to a fault.
Affirmative action is racial discrimination.
There was a high school down the street from where I live in Los Angeles that encouraged all the kids of color to apply for their school play. And only once all the kids of color received whatever positions they wanted, then the white kids could apply. That, in my opinion, is an example of discrimination. The fact that we now have Harvard has black-only kids' dorms, that to me is segregation.
With affirmative action, we've seen with Harvard lawsuits and other things how it's backfiring and it's picking and choosing of which minorities can and cannot have success. It was done to try to create or make up for the wrongs of our past, but I think it's really backfired.
Yeah, it's really, excluding those excelling students in other races to fix the problems of the past, like you said. But I think the past, there were a lot of minorities that were excelling and doing really well.
Despite the foot of the
Exactly.
government. And like,
Yes.
kudos to them.
Yes.
Incredible, strong human beings. And we shouldn't have that discrimination in any way anymore. But unfortunately, it has become a discrimination against other groups.
Me and my mom had a conversation about this because she believes in affirmative action. And for her argument was understandable. She was like, we had people back in the day who were extremely smart and intelligent. George Washington Carver, huge example, had so many uses for the peanut, but he would not be allowed access to like a Stanford or a Harvard because of his skin color. That's also why Black universities were created, because there were a lot of prestigious universities that would not take Black folks. And I think that at the time, affirmative action was a good thing because it forced colleges who may still want to hold on to those values and those beliefs that, okay, we're only accepting this. Like, no, you guys are required now to actually have these students come in here. The problem now is I think that it's gone a little bit too far. It's not based on your works. I think some of it is based on your ethnicity, and I think that your work should speak for itself. Especially I was in engineering or trying to get an engineering degree. I think a lot of people thought I was like an affirmative action case because I was a Black girl in an engineering classroom full of other white students and Indian and Asian students, and being like one of maybe two people, maybe 3 people at most, and I'm being dead serious, in a UC campus that has hundreds of people in the hall. One would assume that I'm there as like, oh, she just got in because, you know, she's black, and having to prove yourself, it's a headache to try to prove to other people, because a lot of people are going to assume that you don't even deserve to be there.
I would like to say that affirmative action programs, the biggest beneficiary according to the data, and this has been government data, has been white women first and foremost. Second of all, I would never use Barack Obama's kids as a barometer for anything, because they do have privilege as well as Will Smith kids. But if we talk about Laquan Smith down the street that nobody knows, there will be some impediments based on his race. Yeah.
Why? How do you know that?
Because people do tend to look and see race. What you were talking about is just racism, but when it's institutional and structural, it does something totally different. And when the black wealth gap is 100 years behind the white wealth gap in America, it'll take 100 years to catch up.
Why do you think that's because of racism, though? You take one thing and say that is the cause for every person of color.
The data bears out.
What data? What data is saying that black people are behind? Because there are many black people that aren't behind, that are doing much better than other people.
You're absolutely right. And there are outliers in every single community. There are very strong, members of the black community that are very affluent. There are also a majority that live in poverty. And if we see a bunch of cities that are majority person of color, and we're trying to recognize why have these places stayed at a very stable poverty line.
But isn't that in chat? Answer me this. Hear me out. Isn't that regardless of what community you come from? If you're in a poor white community, I'm pretty sure the majority of people stay in poor white communities. I feel like that's universal. I feel like that's more of an economic issue, not necessarily a race issue. Like, granted, like if we go to a poor black community, the amount of poor blacks coming out of that community is not going to be high because of economics. Similarly, if you go to a poor white community, the aspect that a lot of them are going to get out and be successful is going to be very, very low. I don't think it has anything to do with racism. Let me know in the comments what y'all think, because that's what I think I'm getting at, is I don't think this is a race issue. I think that historically, because there is some relevance to that. I'm not throwing that out. I'm not throwing that completely out. There is some relevance to the amount of money that might have historically gone to African American schools was very low. Even when it came down to segregation, separate but equal, the problem wasn't the separation, it was the equal part. The equality wasn't there. We have crappy textbooks that are 10 years old, but the white folks across the tracks had the brand new books. So the separation but equal the problem was the equality aspect. So I'm thinking this is more of an economics thing. This has nothing to do with race specifically. And the issue that I have is the aspect of saying that because you're black, and telling students because you're black, because you're Latin, and you live in this particular bracket of society, you have very little chance to get out. As opposed to saying, listen, you were given a bad hand. This is just the way it is, but you can be successful. Getting a proper education with a degree that'll actually work for you, right? Getting a trade that actually will give you money and get you a way out of your situation. As opposed to just saying, you're black, you're poor, sucks to be you, but that's just the way that it is.
Why don't we look at the families, the black families, who have done those amazing things in this country and study what they did to succeed, instead of just focusing on, oh, well, black people are behind and we don't even know what to do. Well, why don't we just go and look? Since you are a professor, wouldn't that be, you go and look at what has worked?
Well, I would never just go to you and just look at you. And I'm sorry, it's just the reality of the data. And so what I share...
Data can be broken up in umpteen different ways. Yes, it can. You're a professor and you're saying that data cannot be manipulated? This is why my kids do not go to public school anymore.
And I'm glad they don't.
I don't like the black professor. He's really getting pompous. Of course, data could be manipulated into multiple different ways. I mean, fine. Let's not even look at successful black people, right? Let's look at successful people making a certain amount of money. You will find in the data that there are certain things that millionaires do that people who don't have millions don't do. There is a book that I read called The Millionaire Next Door. The Millionaire Next Door shows that the majority of millionaires were self-made. They were not trust fund kids, as opposed to what a lot of people will tell you, that they work their butt off and that they stack their cash and they're very slow to spend their money. As opposed to poorer communities, we tend to give out a lot of money, but we don't take in a lot of money. If we want to be more economically successful, you should learn from people who are doing what you're not doing. There are things that you can do as a kid, whether you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, doesn't matter. You can do these things.
Teachers are not paid enough.
I'd be scared to like calculate how much I spent for my classroom, right? Like all the materials, all the things that I'm purchasing, all the things that I'm doing. And it's just interesting to think that we are always told like teachers are heroes, they're teaching the youth of America, but also we're not going to give you enough money to survive comfortably. Like, you're gonna struggle every day. There have been days when I go to work and I'm like, am I gonna have money to put gas in my car? I guess we're gonna find out, right? And I know so many other teachers who are struggling to keep afloat. I can't even imagine I can't even think about having a family as a teacher.
I was a one-on-one aide in a kindergarten class, and it's funny how the list of things that the teacher had were basic stuff that you would think are in a classroom, but honestly, they don't have. The parents are relying on the teachers to have it, and sometimes it will come out of the teacher's pocketbook. It's not going to come from a budget that the teachers have. Here in California, there was a news report where they asked the parents of students to start taking in the teachers, because what they found was that rent and everything was so expensive for teachers in this particular area. So they put out a mass bulletin saying, hey, listen, if y'all have rental properties, if you could reach out to our school and let us know what you guys have and tell us what your rates are, so that way we can make sure that our teachers have a roof over their heads. For someone who is going to be very important and very vital to the learning, to the future of, our country, it's very sad to see that they aren't being taken care of. I think that, especially in California, we have a lot of money going in a lot of places that it shouldn't be, in my opinion. We need to work on reevaluating where a lot of the money's going and start putting it towards things that I believe are more important. Education is one of them, and taking care of our teachers. I would say this was a great one. I enjoyed watching it. Let me know what you guys think, how you guys feel, where you align, the conservative parents or the liberal teachers. If you guys liked it, please like the video and go ahead and subscribe for the next one. I mean, Jubilee has been hitting with these middle grounds. I ain't gonna hold you, so I'm kind of excited about it. As always, Kenn Folks, you know what it is. I love y'all, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.